Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie.
Well, welcome to So Many Books, So Little Time. My name is Joe Nash. This is show number 39. And the premise of the show, if you've never seen it, Zina and I forgot to introduce her, Zina Shevchik, another librarian here. We go down to the new bookshelf here in the library. We also go down to our technical services department, and we bring up some new books that are being processed. We have a whole bunch of new books to talk about. We're both fighting colds today, but I think we will be able to make it through, Zina. So go ahead.
Hacking away. My first book is called Imperfect Harmony, Finding Happiness Singing with Others by Stacy Horn. This is kind of the kind of thing that you might not find talked about in the media very much, although it did get reviewed quite a bit. I thought it was just a little something different. There's a woman, Stacy Horn, who has sung with a volunteer choir in Manhattan for 30 years. And now I have to come up with the name of the church, and it's All Grace, Choral Society of Grace Church in New York. And she's not particularly religious. Her voice is not particularly exceptional, but the book is autobiographical, but mostly about the joy she has found in her life singing once a week in rehearsal and then at different performances with this choral group. She also intersperses commentary about some of the pieces that they sing. It seems like a lot of them are requiems. I'm just mentioning a few because you'll know these. Handel's Messiah, the Brahms Requiem, Ave Maria, and one by Leonard Bernstein that I don't know, but I'm not particularly musical. Chichester Psalms?
I don't know that, no.
So she puts them in context, and she talks about the pieces and the composer's history a little bit, tiny little bit, and she talks about some of the intricacies of learning a new piece of music and about the different conductors that this choral society has had over 30 years. It's charming. It's written in a chatty, easy manner, and it's just charming. I have only read bits and pieces of it. I'm going to take it home and read the whole thing. She talks about her, how different ups and downs in her own life, and how the consistency of being surrounded by just people who joyfully raise their voices together once a week just improved her life so much and brought her peace and joy in a way that very little else did. She talks about participating in the U2 virtual choir. She intersperses some history about different choir societies in Manhattan, some of the mechanics of sound. She talks about how she didn't understand how someone who couldn't hear that they themselves were singing flat when they were in a choir, and she brings an expert in to talk a little bit about the mechanics of the ear and the aging of the ear, which was fascinating to me, about what we lose as we age and how we lose it. And so I just recommend this as a really good read. Imperfect Harmony, Finding Happiness Singing with Others. Charming.
Okay,
delightful.
Now, do they sing at church services, or they have concerts?
They have concerts.
All right. Now,
like they do holiday concerts. Like she said, when spring comes, then they're singing about death.
Okay.
It's like very funny. There's really a lot of funny bits in here too. No, it's not mainly religious. It's not only religious music, but a lot of.
Well, there was that documentary a few years ago. I don't know if you remember it. I forgot the name of it. It was about the senior citizen group that they sing. They don't sing that kind of music, but they sing popular songs, rock songs, you know, and they go around to concerts. And I saw a lot of interviews and excerpts, and these people have a lot of inner joy just from singing with everybody.
Yes. So it's that kind of thing.
Well, it's like,
but they're singing really difficult pieces.
Yeah. It's not like they're singing around the campfire.
No, and then this choral society has gotten extraordinary reviews too. So.
All right, my first book. Our last show, I did a couple of football books. I have another one here. But this book,
it's the season.
I know.
It's the season.
The Super Bowl is this week.
Today is January 28th.
So this book, I am about 2/3 of the way done. It's really excellent. I think for people of a certain age, they'll really like it. This book is called Their Life's Work: The Brotherhood of the 1970s Pittsburgh Steelers, Then and Now. The important thing is then and now. Do you know who that is on the cover?
And number 32.
Yes, Frank.
Bart Starr.
No, everyone, Franco Harris. I mean, come on.
I don't know who that.
You've heard of?
I wouldn't know who was on the Pittsburgh Steelers or not.
This is in the 70s. Some consider the 70s.
I remember the Dallas Cowboys.
Some consider the 70s.
Miami Dolphins.
Some consider the 70s Pittsburgh Steelers the greatest team of all time. I mean, not just for 1 year, but
that's interesting.
for a sustained. It usually comes down to the 70s Steelers or the 80s 49ers, and then in our decade, perhaps the Patriots. But these guys were very famous. They were, the defense was known as the Steel Curtain. Mean Joe Green, Jack Lambert, Jack Ham, Lynn Swan. I can name Terry Bradshaw was the quarterback.
I remember. I know him.
Frenchie Fuqua. I can name all these guys. It's a really, really good book because it doesn't just recap their glory days. It goes into the Rooney family, the team that still owns the Steelers. They had 40 straight losing seasons till the 70s. They were like the lovable losers. And the owner was a old Irish guy, cigar, and he finally became a winner. They won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. So I don't even think the 49ers did that. But anyways, great stories about the Rooney family, all the famous players, where they're from, how they're brought up, their college days, and a lot of the book is the glory days, of course, the 70s. And there's great stories, behind the scenes stuff, and really good. But then the last third of the book, which I'm just starting, is about the effects of all this, the effects of stardom, the effects of the brain injury. How Terry Bradshaw is famous. He's a very famous broadcaster now. Many of these guys went on to become very successful. Many of them died young. Many of them had all kinds of problems, money, the usual kind of unfortunate things. And Mike Webster, who died a few years ago, he's one of the more famous cases with the head injury stuff. He ended up getting Alzheimer's or dementia in his 50s. That's really sad. So the book goes through the price they pay and all that stuff, but excellent book. I mean, it's it's a sports book, but it really transcends sports. It's really, really good book. Their Life's Work: The Brotherhood of the 1970s Pittsburgh Steelers, Then and Now. Really good.
I don't think I'll read it, but I understand it will appeal to many, many people. This is kind of local interest, but it's certainly gotten national attention. This has been reviewed and it's in the media. But I thought it was interesting, in case people haven't heard about it, it's called American Mirror: The Life and Art of Norman Rockwell by Deborah Solomon. Now, there's some controversy about this book. Mainly the family doesn't like the suggestion in here that
she speculates, I think.
Yeah, suggestion that he was a closeted homosexual. I guess the family objects to that. But the rest of the book is really certainly interesting. Contrary to the image that his paintings portray, his life and his personality certainly did not mirror his illustrations. It talks about his early life which in and of itself doesn't sound terrible. He had an older brother who was smarter, bigger, sportier, more handsome, et cetera, than he. And I guess they were very close in age. And Norman Rockwell was, tall and skinny and had a mouthful of teeth, and wasn't that attractive, I suppose. But he wasn't that good at school either. But it talks about his early life in Manhattan and how his summers up in the Adirondacks, a few weeks he would spend, really gave him the rural tone to a lot of his illustrations.
Well, the museum is within an hour drive from here, isn't it?
Yes, they lived in Stockbridge, right, exactly. So that's the local interest, obviously, because a lot of people have been, I'm sure, to the museum, and they're interested in him. It's really well written. I've just read little bits and pieces. He had 3 marriages. He didn't seem particularly good at relationships, except I guess he had some he preferred to spend time with some male companions. I suppose that's where the homosexuality comes from.
I think she supposedly drew on some of the pictures. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
she alludes to some of
one of the reviews I read. Garrison Keillor did a big review of that in the New York Times, and he said if you exclude this one little speculation, it's a tiny 1 or 2 pages.
Right, it's very little.
He said if you exclude that, it's really. And other reviews said if you take all that little speculation out, it's a really good book about his life. People are wondering why she would put that in there, but anyway.
Well, I don't. Why is it such a big deal? So the other side of it in this day and age, but I'm sure to his family it matters. But it's very, it talks about the times of in America and the respect or lack thereof that they gave illustrators versus real art, and but it's written really well, and so I. Did
you read some of it?
Yeah, I read little bits and pieces of it. Yeah, it's excellent.
It got good reviews. I guess he was.
He's a character.
Yeah.
He's a character, but that makes him interesting and.
Well, he wasn't accepted by the quote art world,
right.
I guess.
But part of it was the times. These days.
One of his famous paintings, I just heard in the news, sold in the millions.
Right.
So
people responded to it, obviously, with the cover of the Saturday Evening Post, all that. But one of the reviewers said he illustrated the America that never really was, what we aspired to be.
But it's part of the American, what's the term?
Lore.
American lexicon to say the Norman Rockwell America.
Right, exactly. So it's new, and so if you haven't read other, or even if you have read other books.
Are there pictures in there?
Yes, there's lots of pictures of his work and him, and it talks more about his personal life and how he worked. He was kind of obsessive compulsive.
Yes. Okay.
And I found it very interesting. So.
All right, I'm going to switch books. I'll talk about this one in a minute. Since we'll stay on the art theme, I had this book here about another American artist, probably around the same time, Edward Hopper. It's called Hopper Drawing. A lot of it is his drawings. He did a lot of pre sketches and things for some of his more famous. Everyone knows Edward Hopper. The Lonely Streets, the Nighthawk, the guy at the diner, and so you can see it's filled with his little ideas and things he used. And there's a lot of text in here, little sketches. You probably can't see that good. A lot of sketches. And another interesting thing is there's a lot of photographs of New York City from around the time that he was working that ended up making their way into these are photographs of New York City from that era. They made their way into his painting. So here's a lot more. But there's for example, there's a whole chapter on 2 of his most famous paintings, Nighthawks, and I forgot the name of the other one, Early Sunday Morning. These are the 2, the guy at the diner.
Those are the ones.
So the book is filled with
known.
The book is filled with sketches that he either did on his own, going out and how they eventually ended up in his paintings. They show the finished work, but it's like an artist, or it's like a writer taking notes, and you see sort of the notes he took, and then you see the finished product of the painting. So there's sketches, drawings, there's full size ones that were just drawn a little. So it's actually pretty. So you get here's the sketches for that famous painting of the gas station. I don't know the name of that painting. It was just called Gas. But anyway, you get a good idea of how, like Norman Rockwell, how he worked, how he went about things, and I was skimming through. It was actually pretty interesting. You just think a painter just puts the canvas up and paints it, but a lot of work goes in beforehand, and he used a lot of different mediums. His own sketches, he worked from photographs, obviously some he just made up, but very interesting. Edward Hopper, one of the great American 20th century artists. See, we're foggy from our colds.
We sure are.
So it's called Hopper Drawings.
Ooh, that's a neat cover.
Well, that's the cover.
Open the cover.
The cover is sort of a preliminary pencil sketch of the diner.
But the back, the whole, it goes across.
Oh, I didn't.
It goes across.
All right, let me see if you can see that.
That's
the
great.
famous diner. It's called Nighthawks, but this is just a pencil sketch. So you can see how he worked out a lot of his paintings, and he's a pretty interesting artist himself. I don't know if there's much biographical in here, but it's more about his techniques and how he went about doing things. It looks it's pretty interesting, actually. So
good. Okay, my next one also has gotten quite a bit of press, but I wanted to look at it, so I thought I'd pass it on to you. The Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way by Amanda Ripley. This is talking about, it compares American education system with 3 other systems in particular, which the author holds up as today's ideal anyway. Finland, South Korea, and Poland. And she actually visits the countries and talks to people in the education systems in those countries, but she also follows 3 American students, all from different parts of the country, one from a city, one from deep rural America, and their time they spent abroad, studying abroad as high school students in Poland, Korea, and Finland. And she relays, in their voice, she tells their story about their impressions and their experiences in those countries, and what it was like, what their circumstances, the students' circumstances were before they went abroad, and what their impressions were when they came home of their own high schools and their own education. And then she, the author fills in lots of statistics and explanations of the history of the education systems in those 3 countries. And she comes to conclusions about why our system is just not producing the level of educated populace that the other 3 countries that she highlights are. And basically it's, she says, we didn't ever have to focus on educating our kids really, really well, because we were always such a wealthy, prosperous nation in all ways, and now like the rubber's hitting the road, and we have to start taking education seriously as a nation, which is what the other 3 countries do. They uniformly take educating their young extremely seriously. They hire and train only the best teachers they could possibly have, and the whole country, the entire countries are dedicated to educating their kids and making them excel. So she basically says that's the answer to our problems in the U.S., is that we've gotten away with not having to have a rigorously educated populace, and now we can no longer afford to not do that.
I saw her on some talk shows. That book there was a lot of press about that book and
And
op-ed pieces.
it's really easy to read. It sounds dry and dull, and even the journalist who wrote this, Amanda Ripley, said she always stayed away from education stories because she thought it was, it was. I don't know what they must use terms, but it wasn't the thing you wanted to do if you were a real journalist. And she said it's very complicated, the whole issue. But she wrote, this is written really, really well. As I said, part of it's because it's written in the three students' voices and their experiences both here and overseas. So I highly recommend it. It's not a long book. Very interesting.
Okay. Now here's a book, again, another book getting a lot of press. Now, Zina, are there certain books, or maybe a book, that you've read many times in your life at different points in your life? That you've read maybe when you were a teenager, when you're in your 30s, maybe you read last year or whatever?
No, I don't reread books.
You don't reread?
Generally.
Okay.
No, don't. Sorry, can't play along with you.
Many people do.
I know they do.
So this book is called My Life in Middlemarch by Rebecca Mead. Many people consider Middlemarch by George Eliot, who was really a woman. I forgot her. George Eliot was a pen name. I forgot her real name.
Fanny?
Anyway, Rebecca Mead uses Middlemarch. It's sort of been a guidepost for her life. She first read it as a teenager, was really enthralled with it. She read it again in college. She read it again. So she's read it 3 or 4 times. I think she's probably or maybe around 50. I don't really know her age, but she's a staff writer for the New Yorker, a wonderful writer. And the book is really, I guess it's like 3 strands to it. It's part literary criticism, just about the book Middlemarch, which, again, like I just said, some people consider the greatest English novel, the greatest novel in English, same thing. A novel of which Virginia famously once said, Middlemarch is one of the few English novels written for grown-up people. So it's part literary criticism about Middlemarch. It's part memoir by Rebecca Mead and her life and what she's gone through in her life and how reading that book when she was 17, as opposed to reading it for the 3rd or 4th time when she's in her 40s, maybe early 50s, how she has changed, how she identified with one character when she was young, and now so it's part memoir of her life, and it's part, I think, also a part. There's a lot of biographical information in there about George Eliot. I can't believe I don't know George Eliot's real name.
Isn't she the one, George Eliot, and I can't remember her name either. Was she the one who had that flagrant affair with Chopin? Am I thinking of that?
You're thinking of...
Who am I thinking of? Somebody else? George Sand.
George Sand,
no,
all right.
Okay,
no.
I'm way off.
So, but this book, I've read several really good reviews. Joyce Carol Oates just reviewed it yesterday in the New York Times. It looks really good. So if you like literature, books about books, I mean, there's a lot of books I've read at different points in my life, and the thing is how you change. The book is still the same book.
Well, 17 is. I also read a lot of. I'll say literature when I was a teenager, but I have never read Middlemarch. I've seen the PBS,
yeah.
the PBS series on it, but I've never read it. Will that book make me want to read it?
Probably.
Okay.
I was only reading reviews of this book, and it made me want to read Middlemarch.
Okay, there you go.
Well, there's one book, for example, I've read Catch-22 3 or 4 times. Now, it's different when you're in, I don't know, high school, in 8th or 9th grade. I first read it. Then I read it, I think maybe in my 20s, maybe one other time. The last time I read it, I was in my 40s, and it becomes funnier as you get older because it's all about bureaucracy, craziness, and absurdity.
Yes.
So books, it is interesting how you change when you read a book. I mean, so this is one book that you'll have to reread something, Zina, from your life and your
I can think of a
report.
couple of titles that had dramatic effect on me when I read them, and that was when I was a teenager or I was in my 20s. So I will I'm thinking of a couple of titles right now, so I have to go back to them. But I have to try Middlemarch too.
Okay, yes, My Life in Middlemarch, Rebecca Mead.
We get lazy. I watch TV. I watch the TV series instead of reading the books. Okay, this is something along the genre. I bet they've spoofed these. They should spoof these.
Is this another one
on
that
Saturday Night Live?
History in 100 Objects?
Yeah,
Another one of those?
Kind of like that. 50 railroads. Now, of course, railroads and railroad history. transportation history isn't something I
Well, I think people like
head toward naturally.
people like lists, I think.
Yes, and I see. That's why I'm thinking of Saturday Night Live, if they haven't already done it, could do a good spoof on something on these kinds of books. 50 Railroads That Changed the Course of History, written by Bill Laws, and of course the lists attracted me because I like to
Was it
look
like
at my history.
the Orient Express?
Yes,
Trans-Siberian?
but he also it starts out with in 1804 a railroad in Wales. It highlights. He picked certain railroads out to highlight changes in the engineering or the materials or the dramatic effect it had on a political effect or social effect. And one of the reviewers said people who know transportation history or are interested in railroads would make different choices than this gentleman has. But he starts out in 1804 with a short railroad built in Wales to move coal. It was a high pressure steam engine was developed, and this owner of what was it, coal mine, wanted to change from using a steam engine to move coal up and down to moving it across the land, and then he started moving passengers just a few blocks.
So a lot of it is like the sociology.
Yeah, but it's a history.
Industrial.
Yeah, a lot of it's commercial, but of course they have the Transcontinental Railroad across the U.S. They have the train that brought Jewish people to Auschwitz. They have the Trans-Canada line. They have some China railroads. They have the high-speed train in Japan. Some of them are predictable. They have the railroad that was highlighted in the bridge over the River Kwai. Is that?
Well, that wasn't a real railroad, though.
Well, wait a minute. Let me see. They save the railway children. That must be the. Is that the U.S. or is that British? Now you see now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you confused me. There was a bridge over the River Kwai, the Burma to Siam Railway as the model for the film Bridge Over the River Kwai. So it's got beautiful paintings, small facsimiles of paintings of the times that the railroads were being introduced. It talks about, it's got maps of the countries, and it's got specifics about the... so
each one's 7 or 8 pages longer, so...
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And again, it's not long, but it's really a nice paper, nice photographs, nice illustrations. Learn your history the easy way.
Okay. Now, you just mentioned a minute ago how you got to start reading more because you're watching too much TV.
I'm watching too much TV.
Well, here's where you can satisfy both.
Oh yeah.
Now there's no end to the popularity of Downton Abbey, or as some of our patrons call it, Downtown Abbey. I couldn't find it on the computer. We're spelling it wrong, but this is volume 1. I think we own the other ones, but to show you the popularity of it, not only are people watching it like crazy. I don't know if they weren't based on any novels, but people now want to because all these books have reserves on them. This is Downton Abbey, the complete scripts, season 1. I just saw the other ones. There was reserves on them, so people not only are watching it like crazy, they want to read the script now. So that could satisfy both.
In Downton Abbey.
Why is Downton Abbey so popular, do you think?
Well, there's lots of romance. There's lots of wealth. It's a different period of time when everything was pretty ordered. People had their place, but it's set also in a time of turmoil and change. There's a lot upstairs. The original Upstairs Downstairs was the BBC production was during this period of time.
Same period.
Yeah,
that's
same
what I thought.
period of time. And this is just a peek into the wealth of that area, but there's a lot of romantic characters, and there's romantic characters upstairs and downstairs, and it's I think last night's episode, they were introducing refrigeration into the kitchen for the first time, and the cook was didn't want it, you know.
And then one other thing people may find interesting besides reading it is the writer there, Julian Fellows. He has some commentary and some little notes and things. So if for people who can't get enough, you can read the script, and you can read. He's got a lot of little notes about this and that. Why they, so that's probably pretty interesting for the Downton Abbey fans. Downton Abbey, the complete script, season 1, but I think we own the other ones too. So
we definitely own the DVDs. In fact, I saw on the back the DVD for season 4, which I don't know whether we can put it out now or not. I'm not sure whether it's official. This was fascinating to me. Les Miserables, from stage to screen, the story so far of the world's longest-running musical in words, pictures, and rare facsimile memorabilia. That's what fascinated me, was the rare facsimile memorabilia. This is a beautiful book. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It tells you right from the beginning about Victor Hugo's novel, Les Miserables, published in the early 1800s. And then it talks about how it made it to the stage in several times, and how this latest London stage rendering made it, and all the creative artists it took to put this together, and just incredible pictures and commentary. And what's fascinating is these little pockets in the book that have memorabilia. Rare facsimile memorabilia.
Oh, like the drawings from the
costumes. They have the
like
drawings of the original drawings of the costumes, the posters, the tickets, the programs, the stage illustrations of how the stage was going to be set up.
That's the stage, that whole thing?
Yes.
I never saw it.
This is T-stage plan. I don't know whether that's the whole stage plan or not. There's actually some movable pieces. I thought I was going to pull it out, but I'm not sure.
So have you seen that play done?
They have the script. I've seen it on television.
Right. So they got
they actually have the script. This is the script for the stage director for Act 1, the props.
All right.
Placement of props.
That takes up like 6 pages.
Yeah, it's really incredible. So along with the Downton Abbey scripts, this is fascinating. Okay. Let's see. This is what I was trying to pull out. They actually have the movable stage.
A model of the stage.
Yes, a model of the stage. Jeez. And it's supposed to be a picture of the original. So it's really, they have several pockets in this book.
No wonder the ticket prices are so high. With
here's a ticket stub, supposedly, from, I can't tell what it is. It has on the back here listed what
it's a whole history of the musical.
A ticket for the opening night of the New York production of Les Mis at the Broadway Theater, March 12th, 1987. So it's just a lot to play with. It reminded me of what I felt like when I was playing with dolls when I was a kid. So.
Well, it's interesting you chose that book, because my last book here, the last book we'll talk about, is a very similar book.
Is it?
It doesn't have all the paraphernalia. Memorabilia. It's just a straight book, but it looks like it's almost the exact same thing as that. This book is called Wonder of Wonders, A Cultural History of Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh,
the play Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes.
And again, this is more of a history of everything involved, the composers, the writer, Shalom Aleichem, the stories are based on. It goes into his life. There was several incarnations. There weren't musicals. The Tevye character had already been on stage. It goes into a lot of that, and then it goes into Fiddler on the Roof was like early '60s, I think, and Jerome Robbins was involved, and I guess he's a famously difficult person to work with, as was the guy that starred in it, Zero Mostel. So this goes. I was skimming through it. There's a lot of pictures. Like that book, this book goes into the same kind of story. What it takes to get a musical on Broadway, and you think, all right, they come up. it took years to get it done, and they go through all the development and the songs and this and that, who's going to play here, and they have tryouts outside.
And for those of us who aren't in that world, I mean, this is very illuminating.
Well, I love theater, and I go to a lot of plays, so this kind of history is very fascinating. So
right, the background
so
of it.
you get a lot of insight into sort of like the golden age, I guess you would say, of musicals. This is one of the last of the real golden age ones. I think it was 63 or 4. And then interestingly, and again, there's all kinds of backstage stories on what it takes to put a show together and the songs and everything. When Shalom Aleichem died in 1914, up until that time, he had the biggest turnout in his funeral of anyone ever in New York City. So the Tevye stories were very popular. And then there's a thing where I was reading part of it. Zero Mostel was like, he knew those stories inside and out in like the original Yiddish, and he's like, he thought the musical was going to be, what's the term, a bastardization of the, but he didn't want to do it. Then they taught him into it, and of course it was a gigantic hit. It's an iconic play, the soundtrack sold millions of copies.
He probably thought it was going to be a caricature. It was probably.
But there's maybe a caricature is what I thought.
Yeah.
So they took 7 or 8 of the Tevye stories and made the play, and made into a musical that everyone knows and loves. And some, I think there's some things about this. Maybe some people don't like too much about it. They think it's stereotyping or whatever.
Yes.
And then there was a famous production in the mid-'60s, an all-black cast. They were doing it during the summers of the riots in Brooklyn. That was, pretty interesting how they did that. I mean, I didn't read that chapter, and then at the very end, there's a concluding chapter called "Fiddling with Tradition." The famous song. Tradition. And it just shows the different ways the play's been used and some of the figures in it and everything. So all in all, if you're interested in theater and musicals, and what it takes, plus you learn a lot about Shalom Aleichem. He was known as like the Mark Twain he was the Jewish Mark Twain. So, but those stories, I read the original stories. They're very funny. So if you're interested in theater and Fiddler on the Roof, Wonder of Wonders, A Cultural History of Fiddler on the Roof. And that is it for this time.
That's it?
Yes.
That's it.
Unless you have one more.
No, I seem not to have my book.
Okay, that is it for this time, and we'll see you next time.